Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and I'm here tonight with our Pulpwood Queen pre-show of the Pulpwood Queen Film Club. And I am very excited by tonight's guest. She is a multi-talented young woman from Austin, Texas, that her and her husband did a wonderful documentary. And I will like to introduce Christina Fernandez Shapter. It's spelled like chapter with an S. So here is Christina now, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit about your film and the legacy that your husband has left to you to share with this Texas story that really is one of our history's most tragic moments. So, and then we'll watch the film later. So go ahead, Christina.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me on. I really am so touched and appreciate so much the opportunity to be able to share this film to as wide an audience as possible. This is a documentary, and it's called Porvenir, Texas. It was directed by my husband, Andrew Shapter, who actually did pass away in February of 2019, just as we were about to go into the post-production phase of the film. And so there's a whole backstory to the film, which is the making of the film. But right now, I just want to tell you a little bit about the film itself. I was one of the producers of the film, and I'm sort of helming this, aftermath of making the film in my husband's absence. I truly feel that huge hole that he left, because he was always such a huge, larger than life proponent of all the films that he made. And this is the third documentary that he made. So Porvenir, Texas is a historical documentary, but it marries in a lot of really strong cinematic elements to it. It's about an event that took place in January of 1918. It was called the Porvenir Massacre. Now, what happens is that history is told by the people who sort of won history. It's funny, my son watches Trolls, and there's a second movie, the Trolls movie, where they're talking about music. And even in this little children's story, the lead little troll is saying, "Oh, well, I always thought that this happened," and then the other troll says, "Well, no, that was told by the people who won the event. That's not exactly how things went down." And so what ends up happening is that we need to tell our own stories, right, so that history can really, like, the truth of history can come forward. And so my husband and I discovered this event just by happenstance. We were researching for another film project we were working on, came across this Porvenir massacre, and we thought, well, why hasn't anybody made a documentary about this? And it turns out there were several projects trying to get off the ground, but they never really could kind of come together. And so what we did was we reached out to all these different elements, and they ended up supporting us. And we got some private investor funding, and then that got us our main cinematic, push for the recreation leading up to the actual massacre itself. And then PBS stepped in and gave us our finishing funds. And it was sort of that good housekeeping seal of approval that, for a historical documentary and for PBS to get behind it, it's a big deal. There's so much misinformation out there. This had to be vetted. We had to cross T's, dot I's to make sure that what we were saying was the truth. And Kathy, earlier you mentioned something about that you watched the film and it reminded you so much of, like, sort of a Ken Burns aesthetic. And my husband, he would have loved that so much, because he was such a Ken Burns aficionado, and it was his dream to have this film alongside, you know, Ken Burns's films. And sure enough, PBS did decide to distribute us. And so under their auspices via in Amazon, so there's an Amazon Prime channel that's got all the PBS offerings there, not all of them, so a select one. Our film is there, and you told me that you found us on the front page,
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
I found it. I couldn't. I watched it the night I talked to you. It was really. It was what you know. You hate to say it's a good movie. It's a fabulous movie. Your husband is a photographer, cinematographer. It's in the whole thing is just visually beautiful, but the story itself is so shocking and so disturbing. And as someone that first thing I did when I came to Texas was I took Texas history. This is a story that was not in our history books.
Right,
and
right.
It's not just the ones that won, it's the ones that have the political power that end up telling the stories. And now even more so than ever. I mean, we see the political wars going on right now. That's just, and you wonder how much of it is true. But you were lucky because you had a survivor that came forward. Yes. And this was this 90-some-year-old man who was a child when this happened. And he came forward, and he never talked about it his whole life, but he decided, his days were probably not long for this world, so he decided to come forward. And how fortunate, because, I had a foreign correspondent tell me one time he covered wars in Africa, and he said, if I had not have covered them, it's like they would have never happened.
Yes.
And that's kind of what happened with your story.
Yes.
Nobody covered it, so it's like it didn't happen, but it did happen. And so what's the story that happened after it happened, after you actually came out with the documentary? I mean, it won the Audience Choice Award at the Austin Film Festival. Is that what you were telling me? Or you were at the Austin Film Festival? What was it that you...
Well, no, we premiered the film for the Austin Film Festival last year on October the 1st. And
1 year ago.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty crazy. So much has happened in a year, but it felt like it took 2 years just from the time that he passed away to get to that point, because we were racing against the clock to meet all of our PBS deadlines, because it was a broadcast deadline. And actually, you can watch it right now on PBS in select markets. I mean, at the time, there was nationally, you could watch it the same time on every PBS channel. But now, all the markets get to choose when and how and what, they're going to show. But it is Hispanic Heritage Month, so it is offered right now on your local PBS station if you just check your local listings. So that's good.
So I know what happened, what happened, but a lot of the people out there have no idea what happened. Can you just kind of tell us just the beginning of what happened? Because it's horrible. I mean, I've tried to, it's kind of haunting me, because I'm trying to think to myself, what would I do if something like this happened to me? I have no idea. So tell us what happened.
Well, there was a little village on the Texas side of the Texas-Mexico border of, it's in West Texas. Like if you got, way out to like Marfa, but like even further out around the Los Pilares area. This is 1918, it was difficult to get anywhere at that time. It's horse and buggy, wild, wild west, still.
High desert, yeah.
Yeah. And, back then, people really lived off the land, and these were, peaceful people that had resided there for generations. And so what happened was, you have to understand the Mexican Revolution is going on at the same time. There's lots of violence going on in Mexico. There are, National Guard being deployed to the border to try and keep order, that kind of thing. And so these inhabitants were used to seeing, soldiers around. They were used to, kind of the what was going on at the time. But what happened was there was a clash, and ultimately they were raided in the middle of the night by what we've been able to piece together, a cadre of Texas Rangers, some U.S. cavalry, and some local ranchers. And they grabbed everybody out of their beds. They marched 15 men and some boys to a bluff and executed them for no reason, basically. And it was a very harrowing night. They set the rest of the village on fire. Any remaining women and children that were around fled for their lives because, you know, they had no idea what was happening or why. And they really dispersed to the four corners, basically. And a lot of their descendants never knew that this had ever occurred in their family. And through the making of this documentary, my husband was able to connect about, there's probably more now, but at the time, about 600 descendants who all came together in January of 1918 to commemorate this event. Because what they really wanted was the government to recognize it. You know, the Texas government didn't recognize it. You know, Woodrow Wilson at the time knew from, you know, historical, you know, letters and things like that that were being written to him about what was going on here, that that these things were happening, but everything just got buried. So it was important for these descendants to get closure. They eventually did get a historical marker, and you know, these things are important because they are part of our history, and they inform who we are. You know, so much of the rhetoric these days about Mexico and the United States kind of pits us against each other, even though, like, so many of us are hybrid people. You know, where do we belong? You know, and so ultimately you tend to feel like you're not welcome here, where, you know, if you look at your history, we've been here for generations and generations and generations, really, and not really knowing, you know, why we're in the situation we're in now is due to this buried history. So that was something that was really amazing about making this film, is that we were able to shine a light on something for so many people that just, they thank us to this day from the bottom of their hearts for telling the story of their family.
It's very powerful, and it's also a way of healing, to have it finally be recognized and to have it come out and to have the plaque, which I posted, everybody, on the Pulpwood Queen Film Club. I did a blog today, and I put all the photos that you had sent me of the historical marker, of you and your son Ford, of your husband Andrew, who was this photographer, visionary, documentary maker, and you just lost him a year ago, and yet, you know, you are very strong, because I can't even imagine with a small child, because your son's how old? He's
6 years old. 6 years old. He'll be 7 next month. I can't believe it, but yeah.
I know, it's hard for me to imagine dealing with the loss, and then also having to be a mother to a small child. And I'm also tickled because you're in his room, and I'm looking at all the children's books on the shelves, and they were all my children's favorites. So that's pretty exciting. But you've done an outstanding job. And so now you're just trying to get your husband's and your work. It's your work too. Your work out there so people can see it. If it hadn't have been for Joe O'Connell, hi Joe, I hope you see this, who's, you know, connected us and said, you need to talk to her. I did a story on her. Was it for the Austin Statesman, or he did a story? And I said, yeah, and I had a wonderful conversation with you, and we found out a lot of things about each other. We both love Linda Ronstadt, and you sing, and and you also, but what you've been doing is you've been singing a certain style of singing, but you're working into maybe singing some of Linda Ronstadt's songs. So
Yeah.
what did you call this style that you're singing?
Oh
The
gosh. Well, I mean, I don't know that there's one.
it's Hispanic. You said it was
Oh, well, you know, it's interesting when because I really chose the hardest person in the world to try to emulate as a singer. But you know, if you're gonna shoot, you might as well shoot for the stars type of
Shoot
thing.
for the Stars.
Right?
She's my favorite girl singer, and Blue Bayou has always been my favorite song. But I like she sang so many different genres,
She
and
did. They're
I
all
was telling you in my next book, I even have a chapter about going to a concert in Kansas City with Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles and Dan Fogelberg, and it's quite the story because Linda's lead guitarist, hi Richard Moorbowden. Richard's was the lead guitarist for Linda Ronstadt and grew up with Don Henley in Linden, Texas. So I've got to get you guys connected because I think that would be great. In
I would
fact,
love.
if I can just turn my laptop here a second around, on the wall you'll see my Don Henley signed guitar. And then
Ooh.
above it, I have all the Eagles' signature with my old clarinet. So, I like to sing, but I'm a choir singer. I'm not a lead singer, but I do love music. And so I can't wait to hear you sing. Perhaps we'll have you do that someday. But tonight we're going to be watching this documentary film, and it is so well done. And but it is if there are people out there that are history buffs, you really need to see this because it has been well researched, and like you said, it had to be very well vetted because it was airing on PBS, which is also known for doing the Ken Burns documentaries. But I loved everything about it, and it's one that will stay with me for a really long time. And you can watch it on iTunes, or I watched it, I think, on Amazon Prime,
Yes.
Comcast, and then on certain, check your local listings with PBS because it is available this month because of Hispanic Heritage Month is the month of October. So we're still in October and you can watch it. And then I'm really looking forward to the comments. Christina is on Facebook, and you have, if you have any questions or want to know anything more about the film, is it under Christina Fernandez
Well,
Shapter?
Christina Fernandez Shapter. I think that might be a private or a closed profile, but
Yeah.
Porvenir movie is what you want to look up to find anything having to do with Porvenir.
Okay.
If you have any questions whatsoever, I pretty much see them right away and I get back to people. And also wanted to let you know that I'm working on getting DVDs for sale, as well as movie posters and possibly some other memorabilia coming up pretty soon. So all of that will be on the Porvenir movie Facebook group.
Oh, good, because I really would like to have one of those because it was quite moving, and I'm always love to share the stories of the underdog or the stories that haven't been told, and that's what the Pulpwood Queen Film Club is all about. Is, I started it because so many of my authors, their books go to film, like Jeanette Wall's The Glass Castle and Ron Hall's same kind of different as me. I just had Bruce Cameron on, who did It's the Dog's Purpose. But even if it hasn't been done in a book, screenwriting is storytelling at its finest. And I'm a big film person. I mean, I was just telling one of my friends, she said, well, if you could do anything at your age, what would you do? And I go, well, I just saw David Attenborough on his latest documentary last night, and he's 94. So maybe I'll go back to school and go into filmmaking because I can't think of anything more exciting than reading books than filmmaking, and it's an art form. And I commend you, and I'm looking forward to everything you're going to be doing in the future. I also want to know what your husband's other films are so I can watch them. Are they available?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. I'm pretty sure they're still available on iTunes, but his debut film was a documentary called Before the Music Dies. And that film came out, I think, 2006. And I mean, talk about making a big splash. I mean, it's taught at universities all across the
Oh,
US. It might still be taught, as a class. And then he made another documentary called Happiness Is. And he got to talk to the Dalai Lama, his Willie Nelson. It's basically about the whole
this is
concept of
my kind of movies. Yay.
Yeah, the sort of pursuit of happiness. What is that? And he just had this sort of like burning desire. He also had a burning desire to like travel the US. And so he was a real road warrior, and it's not a surprise that his production company is called Road Wings. So that was his excuse. And then we made a film called The Teller and the Truth. And that was actually a narrative fiction film, but we told it documentary style, but it was a hybrid of documentary and narrative, to the point where some people thought, oh, I'm watching a documentary, and then they were like, wait a minute, this is crazy. Oh my God, this is a fantasy. And so much so that David Mamet reached out to my husband after watching it just on DirecTV and said, I thought I was watching one thing. I realized I was watching something else. I've never seen anybody do that. Congratulations. And I still have the letter framed.
Oh yeah, I would too.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
fantastic.
So, yeah.
Well, if you'll send me in an email a list of those, I'll post it on the film club page, so people, if they like this film, they can watch the other films. And then you are a graduate from the University of Texas Film School, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got some ideas and some things that you might want to do too.
I've got a couple of projects up my sleeve. We talked a little bit about them, but yes, I'm very excited about them.
One's a word. I'm not telling anybody because I don't want anybody to steal your ideas, but I am very excited. And you're an artist too. You like to do, what do you like to do? Do you like to paint? What do you like to do?
It's so funny because I watched you on Facebook when you were traveling and you were doing your alcohol inks. I'm like, oh my God, I've got alcohol inks. I've got collage. I've got like oils. I've got acrylics. I've got watercolors. I just do everything. I just love getting my hands messy, and I like doing portraits. I started by, I'm probably going to give away my age, but I was a big Duranie when I was a kid. And so I drew pictures of like Duran. That was my thing. But yeah, I love portraiture. I just love to draw. I love everything color.
Well, great. Well, you're going to have to come and bring your son, because when I went to Kansas, my cousin's daughter brought her little girl who was, I think, Josie's like 7, and she goes, can she watch? And I go, no, she's going to do it with us. Listen, she called me and she said, Mama Cat, because that's what they call me. She goes, where can I get the alcohol inks and the Yupo watercolor paper? And I'm going, this is 7 years old and she's already got it down. And so I was telling her where she could order it and where she could buy it if she had to be in Wichita. But she loved it and she got hooked. But all kids love art and they should be able to express themselves. And all kids love reading. A lot of kids are taught in school that it's more homework than for entertainment enjoyment. But looking at the books on your shelf, your son does not see that, because he sees book as entertainment, because you've got some great books in there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway,
I can't wait
look at that. Are you reading the Chronicles of Narnia to him?
We're going to start this soon. I'm so excited to score this. I had this when I was a kid.
Well, you're going to have to, when he gets a little bit older, you're going to have to read to him. Scott Boyer, who I interviewed today, is doing it's kind of a youth crossover book series about fantasy adventure. It's the Jade Academy, and is Bobby Ether in the Jade Academy, and the second one's Temple of Eternity. And they are just everything you just dream about when you're a kid, of going on these adventures, and there's mythology and myths involved and animals. It's all the stuff I loved as a kid. I'm just so excited about Scott's book. So and then we'll get him connected to some great children's authors too. But you just keep those things going. I commend you for doing this film, because it had to have been hard. It's a tough story to watch, but those are the ones we need to see. We don't need to all see, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, and we find out that, hey, he didn't even get where he said he was going. He was all over the place. All these stories that we've been taught of Washington chopping down the cherry tree, I mean, they're myths. A lot of them are just flat made up. Even when I had the editor of the Texas Almanac book that comes out every year, where they update it with all the latest stories, they finally went back and they decided to fact check some of these stories, and half of the ones that they had been putting in there for decades were urban legends, and so it's important that we know both sides of any story so we can find our own truths. And it's important for people, especially people that are indigenous to the United States, that they have their day in the sun. Everybody was here before me. I came on the Scott-Irish immigration, and my family came in from Boston to down in the Tennessee, kind of all over the place. And it was shocking to me. Have you ever done your DNA for your background?
I did. Yeah, I did. And it's interesting. I'm like 32% Native American and 50-something% European, which is crazy. But I what I've noticed is that most Mexican Americans have about a 50-50 split of that. And it's because genetically we're part Spanish and also some Italian, probably. I also do have some Italian, but then I also am a little bit Czechoslovakian. My great grandmother was from Czechoslovakia, so that's a little bit,
we're mutts.
Kind of thrown in there. But it's Czech, right? It's so well, and the Irish. I'm not Irish at all, but you were saying you're Irish. Irish very close to my heart because my husband was Irish, or actually he. So my son Ford is William John Ford Shapter, named after Andrew's mother, who is Nancy Ford Weatherby, and she was a member of the Ford family, and Henry Ford was her great uncle. So they're all, isn't that interesting?
I say that I'm Irish, but when I did the DNA, I'm only 19% Scott-Irish. I'm mostly Northern European. And then I have a very small percentage of Norwegian. And I go, what? Where did that come from? So I was kind of surprised. Yeah. I've been told my whole life that we had Cherokee, Native American Indian blood. And I was just so proud of that. I have none. It shows zip. I go, but if you saw my grandmother, you would swear that it was true, because she had jet black eyes and jet black hair. And even my youngest daughter is always being asked if she's Hispanic or Puerto Rican, and actually it's our Welsh background that she gets her dark complexion and her hair color from. And then my other one's blonde and blue eyed. So, we're just all nuts.
We're all nuts. We're all
yeah,
nuts.
we all come from everywhere, and we all have a story, and a story that needs to be shared and told. And I'm thankful that Joe O'Connell brought you to me so that I could hear your story. And I'm looking forward to your path as you move ahead in filmmaking and in your art and singing career or whatever you endeavor. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to let you have a few last words, but I'm just going to give a little housekeeping. As soon as this recording is over, everybody, it downloads and I put it onto my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel. And from there, it will premiere and it can be shared. You can go on there. I'll send you links. You can post it anywhere you want. It really expands out the audience. I just started this thing 2 months ago, and it's really, I think we're over 600 members. And I know that we don't always get everybody on Saturday night. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but I'm at home. I mean, I'm watching movies. I mean, what are they doing? I have no idea, but maybe they're playing dominoes. But I know that people watch these, they go on there and they binge watch, just like I do on Netflix or Amazon Prime. So it will get a wider audience for your film, and I thank you. Be sure and send me an alert when those posters and DVDs so I can send a shout out so everybody can help support you and your late husband and your work, because this is your life's work and you're very passionate about it. And I am so happy to call you my new friend. So we are going to be doing things together. And with me, I took my kids everywhere I go. So bring Ford on. Well, I don't have a big house, but it's a welcoming cabin in the woods. I welcome everybody, and I hope you'll come and we can have some time together, and we'll go over to Linden and look up Richard Boughton. So thank you for joining me. Now, last words on anything you want to share with anybody about life in general, or anything you just feel important that you must say.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Where do I start? Well, I really just want to thank you, really, for this opportunity, to talk about this film. I'm so thankful to Joe for connecting us. I just feel so hopeful right now, ultimately. And this is a really weird time. It's a weird time globally, but it's a weird time, especially in the United States of America right now. I hope everybody votes. I hope everybody gets somebody else to vote who has never voted before. And I hope everybody just stays safe and, really think about your health and safety, think about your legacy, think about love. Ultimately, we were talking last time, we talked about just sort of, what happens to you when you experience tragedy. The bedrock of my life shifted underneath my feet, and you don't really know what that's like until it happens to you. And there's been a lot of tragedy happening, and it's continuing to happen right now. And I just want to say that we can get through this. I know we can. And it's through these connections that I feel that expansion even more. And so I just would encourage people to find your expansion, find your avenues, find your flow, go with that path of least resistance, and we'll make it through.
We will. And love is the most powerful thing in the world. If we could all be civil and love each other and be kind, it will change the world. So thank you, Christina. I'm excited. I really do want you to come and visit me. So we'll introduce you to the Pulpwood. I know, we'll introduce you to the Pulpwood Queen Reading Nation, and I guarantee you that you're going to find a lot of people just like me that want to be your friend and want to share your story. So thank you for sharing. Everybody go to Amazon Prime, iTunes, Comcast, or check your PBS local station to see if they're playing her movie, because it's really good, y'all. And I thank you again, Christina. So until next time, adios. We'll see you down the road, okay?
Bye.
Bye. Tell your son thank you for giving mommy to me, okay?
I will.
Bye-bye.